So the state pension is going up, business taxes are coming down, benefits will be boosted, and national insurance slashed to 10%. Slashed is probably slightly over-egging the pudding, isn't it? These are just some of the measures announced by the Chancellor.
But he's under pressure to go further on tax cuts. He spoke to Eamon and Ellie on breakfast this morning.
We've always been very honest that has meant we've had to raise taxes in order to pay for those schemes. But now we are able to start bringing them down. And yes, there is a short-term impact on growth when you're tackling inflation, because that means that interest rates are higher, and that is reflected in the forecasts. But the measures that I've taken today are what, more than 200 businesses wrote to me to ask for.
Still with us, the Daily Telegraph columnist Madeline Grant and our economics and business editor Liam Halligan. Liam, further reflections on yesterday's autumn statement. Deck chairs being rearranged on the Titanic?
Well, it wasn't really a tax-cutting autumn statement at all. There were headline-grabbing tax-cutting measures. But, of course, Rachel Reeves was spot on. You have to hand it to her. Those tax cuts were more than offset by the massive increase in taxation represented by the freezing of those tax thresholds. Rishi Sunak started that when he was Chancellor back in 2022. They're going to be frozen all the way to 2028, drawing more and more people into paying tax. 4 million more people will be paying income tax in 2028 than in 2023 because these thresholds have been frozen. That starting rate of tax, 12.5 grand. And 3 million more people will be paying the higher rate of tax that are currently paying the basic rate of income tax, including middle-ranking teachers, nurses, police. As I said on Dubes' show last night, just be honest.
Yeah.
If you want to raise the basic rate of income tax by 6p over 5 years, which is what these tax rises amount to, these freezing of thresholds, then do it. And you and I, Bev and Mark and Mads and Uncle Tom Cobley and all, we can have a chat about it and see if that's the way we want to run our economy.
Yeah.
Don't pretend that you're tax cutting when you're actually tax raising, because the punters know and they resent you for treating them as if they're stupid.
You're so right. And in fact, we had Adam Brooks, pub landlord, on yesterday, who was just infuriated by the idea that we're freezing duty on alcohol was somehow a gift. It's like saying, I could punch you in the face, but I won't punch you in the face, and therefore aren't I marvellous that I'm not going to punch you in the face? I mean, Adam is a boxer now, so I can use that analogy quite safely.
Literally.
The sort of stupidity that they seem to impose upon the public that we won't see through this is astounding, Liam.
It's the black arts of political spin. Look, if we did have a sort of 6p rise in the basic rate of income tax, the likes of us on this panel, we'd talk about little else. Would be, I'm not saying there'd be civic unrest, but there would be a massive philosophical discussion. Are we Sweden? Are we Finland? Or are we America, right? But when you boil the frog slowly, the frog doesn't know that it's being boiled. And freezing tax thresholds, fiscal drag, it is the ultimate frog-boiling exercise. This is meant to be an open democracy, a vibrant political culture where we talk about things, and yet we've got these sneaky tax rises, and it's massively counterproductive.
Just to explain the boiling frog analogy.
I've had my 3 shreddies this morning, you can tell, right?
I like it. If you put a frog in boiling water, it will spot it instantly and it will leap out. If you put it in tepid water and you raise the heat slowly, it doesn't know and it dies. Apologies to any frogs who were offended by that analogy. But, Madeline, what struck me yesterday, and I'm interested that Liam mentioned this, was that Rachel Reeves just took that autumn statement to pieces yesterday, and he just handed it to her on a platter, and it was so easy for her to just put a line through it all and just say, you're talking nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy for them to say that, but I've yet to hear what their plans are for the economy, or how they would reduce the size of the state, which is, if you want to cut taxes, it's going to have to entail some serious retrenchment.
Yeah.
They're very good at carping from the sidelines and not developing a real plan of their own, and that's not to excuse. I thought Liam made that point so brilliantly about the fact that we're not having public discussion and therefore democratic buy-in to these dramatic decisions. I also think that in general our system is just becoming, it's actually very worthy of Gordon Brown, I think, because it's a very complicated system. They give with one hand, take with another. There's never any discussion of how we might simplify the incredibly complex tax system that we have, and therefore make it more transparent. But I think actually the complexity suits politicians, because it means they can very easily give patronage to one particular group of voters if they want to court them.
How very cynical of you.
Listen, can I offer something rare, which is a bit of balance on this? Because I know that our viewers and listeners are struggling, and that's millions of people who are worried about how they're going to pay their rent, the cost at the supermarket, food inflation is a nightmare, and so on. Everything's going up.
Absolutely.
But we had a pandemic, 2.5, 3 years. We shut the economy down on and off for that period. We borrowed $500 billion. I wonder whether it's a miracle we're not in a worse state. First of all, we do not have high inflation anymore, so that's gone down to just over 4%. Interest rates are steady, and we avoided recession, unlike the Eurozone and Germany. So I wonder whether the government might deserve credit that things aren't even worse.
Well, certainly, though, if we had had the opposition in charge, it would have taken us longer to get out of lockdown. They were fiercely resisting any...
Keir Starmer called Freedom Day reckless.
Well, exactly, and there was all that nonsense about this is the Boris variant and all this absolute gutter, distasteful, ghoulish politics that they were indulging in, which, at the time, I think probably you had loads of people on GB News who were criticising that. Certainly in the Telegraph, we were very critical of that too. But, as Boris said, them's the breaks. Whoever is in charge will get blamed for the situation, however unfair that is. And people will take that.
Is it not a story that Britain has not entered recession? Germany is. The Eurozone has been in recession. I think it was the IMF who predicted a year-long recession for this country.
And the Bank of England.
That's true. And the OBR seems to have been wrong about absolutely everything. I mean, the story seems to be that you can't trust the official forecasts. However, I don't think we can be complacent about the terrible state that we're in, because, as we was talking about before the break, a lot of this growth is actually just having more people in the country. If we look at GDP...
Which is a bit like cooking the books, isn't it?
Well, exactly. I think so too. And either way, we should be looking at countries that have genuine growth year on year, and looking at what they do and how they achieve that.
Liam, let's look forward then to the next 6 months, because we know we're being played to some degree, don't we? We know there's going to be a lot of electioneering decisions made in the next 6 to possibly 12 months. Knowing what they did yesterday, how does that perhaps form a building block for what might come in the spring?
Well, I think Mads is right. It's easy for Labour to cart from the sidelines. The reason we haven't gone into recession, Mark, I think we've not gone into recession in the country despite the politicians. We've not gone into recession because this country is full of very dynamic, driven, entrepreneurial people who get up every day, go to work and make things happen. And that is the spark that Britain has had and, in my view, always will have. That's why we've not gone into recession. We've also not gone into recession because of some smoke and mirrors, because we're borrowing lots of money, the government is, and then spending it, and that counts as extra GDP, but it doesn't count as extra GDP per head or per capita. And Mads is right. A lot of the GDP rise is also driven by immigration. That's why standards of living are falling, even though there's growth. Looking forward, Bev, I do think there's going to be more talk of tax cuts, more headline-grabbing tax cuts, as the size of the state remorselessly increases, because they're not going to change those tax bands. They're going to keep going with this, what we call fiscal drag. They're going to keep drawing more and more people into taxation at higher rates. And that will mean there won't be a feel-good factor. And that's why I think the Tories will ultimately lose this election, because they're not generating a feel-good factor. As Reagan said, do you feel better off than this time 4 years ago? And people don't.
No, we don't. And you haven't made me feel any better, Liam.